This is Chapter 25 of Following the Equator. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Following the Equator by Mark Twain, Chapter 25. Bound for Bendigo. The Priest at Castlemaine. Time saved by walking. Description of Bendigo. A valuable nugget. Perseverance and success. Mr. Blank and his influence. Conveyance of an idea. I had to like the Irishman. Corrigan Castle and the Mark Twain Club. My Bascom mystery solved. Classic. A book which people praise and don't read. Pudd'nhead Wilson's New Calendar. On the rail again, bound for Bendigo. From diary, October 23. Got up at 6, left at 7:30. Soon reached Castlemaine, one of the rich gold fields of the early days. Waited several hours for a train. Left at 3:40, and reached Bendigo in an hour. For comrade, a Catholic priest who was better than I was, but didn't seem to know it. A man full of graces of the heart, the mind, and the spirit. A lovable man. He will rise. He will be a bishop some day. Later, an archbishop. Later, a cardinal. Finally, an archangel, I hope. And then he will recall me when I say, "Do you remember that trip we made from Ballarat to Bendigo, when you were nothing but Father C., and I was nothing to what I am now?" It has actually taken 9 hours to come from Ballarat to Bendigo. We could have saved 7 by walking. However, there was no hurry. Bendigo was another of the rich strikes of the early days. It does a great quartz mining business now, that business which, more than any other that I know of, teaches patience and requires grit and a steady nerve. The town is full of towering chimney-stacks and hoisting works, and looks like a petroleum city. Speaking of patience, for example, one of the local companies went steadily on with its deep borings and searchings without show of gold or a penny of reward for 11 years. Then struck it, and became suddenly rich. The 11 years' work had cost $55,000, and the first gold found was a grain the size of a pin's head. It is kept under locks and bars, as a precious thing, and is reverently shown to the visitor, hats off. When I saw it, I had not heard its history. "It is gold. Examine it. Take the glass. Now, how much should you say it is worth?" I said, "I should say about 2 cents. Or, in your English dialect, 4 farthings. Well, it cost £11,000. "Oh, come. Yes, it did. Ballarat and Bendigo have produced the 3 monumental nuggets of the world, and this one is the monumentalest one of the 3. The other 2 represent £9,000 apiece. This one, a couple of thousand more. It is small, and not much to look at, but it is entitled to its name, Adam. It is the Adam nugget of this mine, and its children run up into the millions." Speaking of patience again, another of the mines was worked under heavy expenses during 17 years before pay was struck, and still another one compelled a wait of 21 years before pay was struck. Then, in both instances, the outlay was all back in a year or 2, with compound interest. Bendigo has turned out even more gold than Ballarat. The 2 together have produced $650 million worth, which is half as much as California produced. It was through Mr. Blank, not to go into particulars about his name, it was mainly through Mr. Blank that my stay in Bendigo was made memorably pleasant and interesting. He explained this to me himself. He told me that it was through his influence that the city government invited me to the town hall to hear complimentary speeches and respond to them; that it was through his influence that I had been taken on a long pleasure drive through the city and shown its notable features; that it was through his influence that I was invited to visit the great mines; that it was through his influence that I was taken to the hospital and allowed to see the convalescent Chinaman who had been attacked at midnight in his lonely hut 8 weeks before by robbers, and stabbed 46 times and scalped besides. that it was through his influence that when I arrived this awful spectacle of piecings and patchings and bandagings was sitting up in his cot letting on to read one of my books, that it was through his influence that efforts had been made to get the Catholic Archbishop of Bendigo to invite me to dinner, that it was through his influence that efforts had been made to get the Anglican Bishop of Bendigo to ask me to supper, that it was through his influence that the dean of the editorial fraternity had driven me through the woodsy outlying country and shown me, from the summit of Lone Tree Hill, the mightiest and loveliest expanse of forest-clad mountain and valley that I had seen in all Australia. And when he asked me what had most impressed me in Bendigo, and I answered and said it was the taste and the public spirit which had adorned the streets with 105 miles of shade-trees, he said that it was through his influence that it had been done. But I am not representing him quite correctly. He did not say it was through his influence that all these things had happened, for that would have been coarse. He merely conveyed that idea, conveyed it so subtly that I only caught it fleetingly, as one catches vagrant faint breaths of perfume when one traverses the meadows in summer, conveyed it without offense and without any suggestion of egoism or ostentation, but conveyed it nevertheless. He was an Irishman, an educated gentleman, grave and kindly and courteous, a bachelor and about 45 or possibly 50 years old apparently. He called upon me at the hotel, and it was there that we had this talk. He made me like him, and did it without trouble. This was partly through his winning and gentle ways, but mainly through the amazing familiarity with my books which his conversation showed. He was down to date with them, too, and if he had made them the study of his life he could hardly have been better posted as to their contents than he was. He made me better satisfied with myself than I had ever been before. It was plain that he had a deep fondness for humor, yet he never laughed, he never even chuckled. In fact, humor could not win to outward expression on his face at all. No, he was always grave, tenderly, pensively grave, but he made me laugh all along, and this was very trying, and very pleasant at the same time, for it was at quotations from my own books. When he was going he turned and said, "You don't remember me?" "I? Why, no. Have we met before?" "No, it was a matter of correspondence." "Correspondence?" "Yes, many years ago. 12 or 15. Oh, longer than that. But of course you—" A musing pause, then he said, "Do you remember Corrigan Castle?" "No, I believe I don't. I don't seem to recall the name." He waited a moment, pondering, with the door-knob in his hand, then started out, but turned back and said that I had once been interested in Corrigan Castle, and asked me if I would go with him to his quarters in the evening and take a hot Scotch and talk it over. I was a teetotaler, and liked relaxation, so I said I would. We drove from the lecture-hall together about 10:30. He had a most comfortably and tastefully furnished parlor, with good pictures on the walls, Indian and Japanese ornaments on the mantel and here and there, and books everywhere, largely mine, which made me proud. The light was brilliant, the easy-chairs were deep-cushioned, the arrangements for brewing and smoking were all there. We brewed and lit up, then he passed a sheet of note-paper to me and said, "Do you remember that?" Oh, yes, indeed. The paper was of a sumptuous quality. At the top was a twisted and interlaced monogram printed from steel dies in gold and blue and red, in the ornate English fashion of long years ago, and under it, in neat Gothic capitals, was this, printed in blue: "The Mark Twain Club, Corrigan Castle, 1870 " "My!" said I, "how did you come by this?" "I was president of it." "No, you don't mean it." "It is true. I was its first president. I was re-elected annually as long as its meetings were held in my castle, Corrigan, which was 5 years." Then he showed me an album with 23 photographs of me in it. 5 of them were of old dates, the others of various later crops. The list closed